So I finally was able to sit down and watch the Robocop 4K from Arrow Video. So let's get into this movie and the 4K disc and all the details. So I've already done an unboxing. I'm not going to go over that, but just to go over it real quick. Here's a poster. Here's a booklet. Cool stuff. And it did come with the sticker, but I put that on my pin board. And then you get the 4K with tons of bonus features, theatrical cut, director's cut, and a bunch of images from the movie. And you get it in a nice hard box. So that is Robocop. So let's talk about Robocop. So this movie, if you don't know, is directed by Paul Verhoeven. Now, why that's a significant name is he directed the original Starship Troopers. Because I think there's like 5 direct-to-video sequels. I've never seen any of them, but the first Starship Troopers is a classic of the sci-fi genre. And Total Recall, the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he also directed this movie. So if you've seen those movies, you kind of understand what he does with these movies, which is that these are movies that they have lots of violence, lots and lots of it. They have lots of sci-fi action, kind of horror-ish elements to them as well. Even this movie, but it's pretty easy when you watch a movie like Starship Troopers to really see what he goes for in these movies, which is that these are movies that, while they're sci-fi, while they have action, they're also political satires on some issue in our society. And that's what all these movies do so well. So, yeah. So basically, if you don't know what Robocop's about, it's about this guy he's a police officer, and he dies. He gets shot and murdered by some criminals. So to test out this new expensive artificial police force idea that they're trying to do, they make a Robocop basically out of his dead body. So he has no memories of who he actually was, and then through the film, of course, discovers who he actually was, and has to stop a villain and blah 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 blah. But basically, that's the movie, and it's a really great idea for a movie, because basically you got this cyborg man, basically, Robocop, and that's a really interesting idea explored. He's basically a more interesting cyborg than Cyborg in both versions of the Justice League movie. And it's just really cool to see him grapple with his identity, and it kind of gives us the idea of, there's obviously themes of identity, how much is machine, how much is not, and should we have police run this? And also, we have a society that is overrun by crime and things like that, and the billionaires who are trying to make things to stop it are actually really not trying to make things to stop it. They're actually looking out for their self-interest. At least the villain is in this movie, right? So there's a lot of interesting themes to dive into with this movie, just like all of Paul Verhoeven's movies. And it's a shame what happened to his career after, these movies, because if you don't know, Paul Verhoeven directed the movie Showgirls. The movie Showgirls was one of the first movies to be rated NC-17 with a budget of, I believe, 500 million, something like that. 50 million, something like that. Some crazy amount. And if you don't know what NC-17 is, because there are people who really don't know what the NC-17 rating is basically a rating that's above the R rating. So the R rating, basically, if you are 17 and older, you can get into it, right? But there's also some caveats to that, right? So if someone who is 21 or over is watching the movie with you, and you're underage, that's totally fine. Movie theaters will let you in. So say, I'm 16, my dad takes me to the movie. if he's sitting in the seat next to me and watching it with me, totally fine. They'll let me in. NC-17 ratings, they don't do that. You're completely not allowed to watch the movie unless you have like proof of ID and you're 17 or older. It's usually a rating for excessive amounts of nudity. It can be for other things like violence and stuff, but it's very rarely ever for that. It's usually just nudity. We tend not to use the NC-7 rating anymore because the NC-17 rating has a lot of controversy and other issues to it. But yeah, so he made this movie, and it's notoriously one of the worst movies ever made. It bombed horrifically, tanked a lot of these actresses and actors' careers. And so yeah, this was that's the story behind him. You know, he just disappeared out there, and it's really sad because, again, these are classic movies. They're fantastic movies. So, you know, and that tainted his career, obviously, not just the actors involved. So it's very unfortunate. Now let's get into this movie and how it looks in 4K. This movie looks absolutely stunning. I popped this in and I immediately noticed how amazing this 4K disc is. I hadn't watched the previous Blu-ray, so I don't know if the Blu-ray looked any better, but I did watch this. It looked phenomenal. It looked great. The 4K was just amazing. It was definitely very grainy though, but it, like, in a good way. It looked there was a lot of film grain. It looked really fantastic. The parts that I noticed that had the most grain though were the scenes that were supposed to have grain, like the news reports was supposed to look very grainy. It looked excellent. And you do get the director's cut in 4K, and then you get the theatrical cut in 4K, which both look incredible on 4K. This is an incredible movie. It's running at a price of $32 for this whole box set you see right here. I highly recommend this release. It's a great release. It's the best this movie's ever looked. It's a fantastic movie, and it was just a really great movie of its time. I definitely recommend all of Paul Verhoeven's sci-fi movies that I mentioned in this video, like Starship Troopers and Total Recall. They're fantastic. Definitely check that out.